Okay, hello everybody. I believe we're live. I'm just resetting on my phone here to make sure. And it looks like we are live. So welcome. If anybody has anything in the any comments or questions for us today, put them in the comments because I will be keeping an eye out on my phone. And today I am so excited to introduce you all to Lord Milan. Welcome. How are you doing today?
I am amazing, Jessica. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't wait to really get into your story because I think it's just so beautiful how you were able to take like something so devastating and despite all of those, circumstances that you were facing, you were still able to pick yourself up and turn your life around, become, a coach, an author, a podcaster, all of that. So can you take us a little bit through your journey as to like what exactly happened and how were you able to find the strength within to overcome and build everything that you've created for yourself this far?
Well, long before I was Lord Milan and all this amazingness existed, I was just a kid from the South and grew up in a biracial family. And in the '80s, which being biracial in the '80s in the South was not a very cool place to be. It was a lot of ideas that I my difference was not good. And I think I internalized that somehow my difference was bad or negative, and that created a lot of like negativity within myself. And by the time I remember at 14, praying angrily, honestly, asking God to use me in an epic way. I just felt like my life what didn't matter, and I didn't want to have just a 9 to 5 kind of job and a 9 to 5 kind of life. And 2 years later, I broke my neck. And I didn't know at the time, but that was really the catalyst to my, my origin story, so to speak, to being a superhero. And, when the injury happened, I dove off a boat dock and broke my neck. And they said I would never have any feeling or movement ever again. That below my collarbone, just, sorry, buddy, you're screwed. I didn't realize at the time that they had also told my parents to put me in a home because it would just be too painful for them to see me not progress. They didn't do that, thankfully. But yeah, it was really a jarring experience. And once I didn't have any feeling or movement below my collarbone, I thought, well, what else do I have? And I came to realize that my thoughts and my words were the only thing that I had left. But those are really the basis of all of our story, the thoughts and words that we have about it. The story that we're telling ourselves about, money and women and progress and life and sex and religion and, everything. And I began to really pay attention to that story and the words that was coming out of my mouth. And I remember specifically, I used the word cripple to describe myself one time when I was still in the hospital. And my PT at the time stopped me very quickly and said, do not say that about yourself. Like, you are injured. That's it. You got injured and now is now. And what are you going to do about it? And, I really took that attitude going forth and went to college. 6 months after I broke my neck, I could barely move or stay awake. I was so tired and everything atrophied. I was 6 foot tall, 185 pounds when the injury happened, athletic and everything, and went down to 144 pounds within a week. Atrophy. So everything was just like really exhausting. But like the more I realized that if I can't hide my wheelchair, which I obviously can't, that I wasn't going to hide anything else about me either. The desires that I had, I went into women's wear as an 18-year-old, in college. It's like, that's not really, that's not really the popular choice for a heterosexual man from, the family and whatnot that I was from. But went down that path and started to say yes to my own ideas rather than saying yes to what I thought other people approved of. And that really led me to make decision after decision that was really the most authentic. And that attracted so much more to, the point where I am now, where I can give so much more because I have so much more.
Yeah. I find it so interesting that you mentioned that you were kind of just asking God to like use you in the grandest version, and then your accident happened because
Yeah.
I actually did something similar. For myself, I remember saying like, God, like, what do you want me to do? Like, I'm here for it, whatever it is. And then my car accident happened like a few months later. And so it's just interesting. Anyways, anybody listening, I'm not saying, ask God to direct your life and it's going to create something like some
Right, chaos, right?
Right, exactly. But it's just, yeah, it's very interesting. And so let's talk, because now you started your coaching program, right? I believe Day
Right.
One Mindset. So what can you explain, like, how do you take people through that? And do you take it like from your own personal experience, like you started saying, yes to yourself and moving towards what felt good? So how do you help people move forward in their life despite the circumstances that they may be facing?
Well, it's really, yeah, it's based on my insights and my story. It's that personal thing, because I think that gives them the proof that even if it looks unlikely, that's fine. That's totally fine. Like, I remind people that God's in the unlikely business, and like, hey, like, I did it all without a body. I joke, if I did it all without a body, you got a body, you're already ahead of me, and just remind them of that possibility is always available, and that solutions are built into the story, no matter how sketchy it looks. And really, like, for the first bit, we focus on their own inner conversation. Like, what's your self-talk like? Like, what are you saying to yourself about your kids and your family and your job and your body and, all these things? Because, like, it's been proven that the conversation we have with ourselves is the most dominant conversation of our day, every day. And a lot of times, like, our self-talk is repetitive as well. So if it's repetitive in the wrong direction, your life is constantly going to be a struggle. And once they get a hold of that, it's amazing what they're like, oh, I didn't realize I was doing this, and then we can start adjusting accordingly. And yeah, it's really, there's a framework that I built that's the Day One Mindset itself, that, simple 5-point framework. And once you start to incorporate that framework into every situation that you're in, you realize just how much of a major player you can be. And then we go into a secondary part called superhero training, and where it's like you understand and develop a different relationship with challenge and hardship than you've ever had before. And you start to use those as stepping stones and really fuel. Because I remind people that solutions don't make sense without problems. They just don't. So it's like, if you have problems, great. If you can identify a problem, then the solution will come as well. Like, ice skates don't make sense unless you want to go skating on ice across a river without falling through. Like, nothing makes sense without the problem. So it's like, problems can't be the problem, And it's usually just a lot of small tweaks like that at first. But what that does is, pretty quickly, produce a lot of coincidences and synchronicities in their life that they're just like, whoa, okay, what'd you do to me? But it's really just like the way that you see the world is the way that the world reacts to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Yeah. And I love what you're saying by it. Everything really begins within, and with the language that we have and the self-talk that we have, like, we're with ourselves 24/7, like, we are our experience. And so we want to make that an enjoyable place for us, right? Yeah.
And there's the thing that we've all heard, watch what you say,
Mm-hmm.
And in most situations, you probably heard it from an adult, of this, like, basically be mindful of saying please and thank you, your manners. But really, I think watch what you say is not a warning, but a promise that, the words that you're speaking all the time, eventually they'll become your world, eventually. Yes. And, I'm a firm believer that the Bible is a real practical manual for life. And one of the things is you'll eat the fruit of your words. It's like, well, do you want to eat a rotten banana, or do you want to eat a fresh banana? Like, I'd rather eat a fresh banana. So let me be mindful of how, I'm talking about my world, because, eventually that's going to be the next episode. You're just like, oh, dang, this episode sucks. I'm like, yeah, you wrote the story.
Right.
But with my prayer, the thing that started it all off was I asked God for an epic life, and he gave me an epic challenge. But that epic challenge allowed me to have an epic life. And, I tell my clients, you can have all my success without any of my scars. All the stuff that took me decades to learn, you can get in this 90-day window, and it's like, sweet.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I love that. And isn't it, there's like a saying too of like, watch what you say because your words cast spells. That's why it's called spelling. So like, there's all kinds of, indicators that are telling us that, yeah, what we say, like, our words are actually like really powerful. Um, I'm wondering too, like, how do I phrase this? So, like, as much as what you held, like, if you had an idea of what it was that you wanted to create in your life, I mean, sometimes we don't necessarily need to know the how. And like, I'm saying this from the point of view of like my experience and like my accident and everything. And what I wanted to create wasn't going to look the way that I thought it was going to look because I had,
Right.
you know, experience. I was at like a limited capacity, but it doesn't mean that it wasn't possible to achieve that end result. I just had to get a little more creative as to how to bring it about. And so, like, have you experienced any of that in your in your experience of like just things had to look a little different than what you had originally had on your mind, but you were still able to, you know, see the end result through? Am I making sense?
You are. And one
Okay.
of the things, the big things in my coaching, I tell people the how is not your concern. And
Right.
they're just like, what do you mean? But like, because like as adults, the older you get, the more you know how to do, literally. You know, like
Mhm.
10 years ago, you might not have known how to, hook up your Netflix account. But like now it's just so easy, or at a certain point, tying your shoes was like a huge obstacle. But now you don't even think about it because you know how to do it so easily. But oftentimes, like the grand scheme of like, hey, that job or that career or that relationship or that amazing thing that I want, if you knew how to do it, you would already do it. And it's like you're more apt, and your time is more spent in a better way if you focus on what you want instead of how you're going to get it. Because the how can be anything. Like this conversation right now can give you an idea that makes your dream come true that I didn't even know about.
Mhm.
And that's not what you planned on. You were like, oh, well, I have to talk to, Sharon Stone. She's the only one that can help me. But it's like, no, your life is not based on one person or one experience. And like as soon as we let go of the how starts to take care of itself. Like, I was focused on years ago, 7 years ago. How long have I been with this? I'm married. I can't remember. A while. But I remember thinking, it's like, where am I going to meet this person? How am I going to meet this person? What's the situation going to be? And that wasn't getting me anywhere. Instead, I was like, well, what kind of relationship do I want? And I was like, oh, that's something I can do something about. So I got real clear on like, what's the ideal relationship for me? What are the ideal characteristics? Like, how would I like to interact with my future wife? Like, oh, these characteristics would mean the most to me. And then when I met her in some convoluted way, this where I wasn't even trying, I realized that she's all those characteristics and like 50 other ones that I didn't tell anybody. And I was like, oh, well, that's cool. That worked out. And it's like the reminder that we don't have to force things to happen in order for things to happen. We just have to be like you said, creative and willing. And eventually it can sometimes lead to a place that we didn't even know that we wanted to be in.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure. For sure. Okay, I didn't expect for us to talk about relationship today, but because you brought it up, I just have to share it. So
Okay.
when you were creating and like thinking to yourself, okay, this is what I want in a relationship, but then like because whatever we want in a relationship, we need to be embodying that as well, right? Like we can't expect to have someone who works out all the time if we're just like, no, we're eating chips on the couch all the time. You know what I mean? And so it kind of
Right.
has to also reflect to you. So when you decide this is what I want, then it's like, okay, am I embodying those qualities too? Because I need to be at a state to be able, like an energetic match with the person that is coming into my life too, or that I'm attracting into my life. Like, what is
Oh,
your
yeah.
take on that?
Oh, I firmly agree. I don't think that you can ask for or have what you don't already have to some degree.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you, oh, I really want somebody that's multilingual and we can travel a lot, but you don't speak any other languages, like you should probably do that. Or like, oh, I want somebody that, can do this and that and makes a lot of money, but you don't even understand money yourself. I think you're setting yourself up to be really frustrated. And, I'm a firm believer that, like scripture says, he that has more will be given. So it's like you have to have some type of basis of what you're desiring. And I think the only reason that we desire certain things is because those things are meant for us anyway. And, part of my superhero training program is like, stop waiting for the hero to come. Stop.
Mhm.
Just stop. Become the hero yourself. Become happy and fulfilled and complete within yourself, and all those things will be attracted to you.
Mhm.
Like, and I joke with people, I'm like, you don't have what you want because you're not attractive enough. And it's like, give yourself those things, like love yourself, see yourself as valuable, the desires and things that you want to do. If I didn't do all those things, then my life with my wife would not be as conducive as it is. And, I told her a while back, hey, thanks for believing in me. And she said, thanks for giving me something to believe in. What would she believe in if I didn't do stuff?
Mhm.
And it's like, yeah, like you are the architect of your life. And the right people will resonate with that and say thank you. And the people that aren't for it, they won't.
Mhm.
But, people can't appreciate what's not there. So like giving yourself those things and, loving yourself. And I think it was Whoopi Goldberg that said, if a person says you complete me, run, because they're expecting you to fill in their gaps.
Mhm. Yeah, that's powerful. So can you break down your term superhero for us? Because if people think that, they might be like, oh, like superwoman, like what,
Yeah.
what exactly does that mean? So when you're saying like unleash your inner superhero, like everybody's a superhero, we kind of touched on it, but can you just like elaborate on like what exactly does that mean for you and what you are really wanting to come across like in your training and when you speak and work with people?
It really comes down to the ability to operate above capacity and to be more powerful than the circumstance, regardless of that circumstance. And you can be more powerful than the circumstance because you can control the story. You can control what it means. You can control your own thoughts, and your thoughts, words, and actions are dictating everything anyway. So like when you purposely control your thoughts, words, and actions in any direction, that's what happens. And most people are not paying attention. Most people are not. They're not spending time about themselves or about their life. They're just accepting a lot of the default settings. It's kind of like when you first get any bit of technology, your phone's going to be what the factory settings are. It's not really your phone until you get the apps that you need, you have the contacts that you need, then it becomes your phone. And it's the same with your life. Is like, as soon as you start to curate the details of it, then you realize how much more of the life that it really is yours. And like with superheroes, we're not only able to do that, but it's the things that we're able to release as well. We release so many things that it's like, oh, I can just forgive that person. Oh, I don't have to just react. I can respond the way I choose. Oh, I don't have, and it's like you realize that you're so much more of a major player in your life, and you start to create synchronicities. And one of the phrases that my clients and I use is the term get to. Instead of saying I have to go to work, I get to. I have to take out the trash. Nope, I get to. Because your mind is already accepting of the phrase get to as something worthwhile. I get to, make out with my wife. Like, oh, it's so awesome. I get to, pay all my bills on time. It's so great. I get to travel and do all these things. I get to, even with the challenges. And it's just like we're tweaking our brain in a way that like superheroes think. And it's an entire 4 weeks of the program are just focused on that. How do superheroes think? And there's overlapping characteristics no matter what superhero you're talking about. And that's part of the reason that they're able to do so much, not because of the superpower that they have, but of what they believe about themselves. Like even in the Avengers movie, once Thor believed, like, dude, do you know who you really are? He was like, oh yeah, I guess I can do more than I thought. Even
Right.
Thor at that point, he's already Thor. But like to step it up a notch and like we can keep quantum leaping, there is no end point.
Mhm. Yeah, I love that. And what a great perspective shift to know, like, I get to, it's not something that I have to do. That's so
Yeah.
like energy draining. But when you get to, then it brings that kind of like lightness to it.
Right.
So you were given kind of like, you were told after having broken your neck that like, that's it, paralyzed, waist down, you would never walk again. But you are starting to walk again. You have been able
Yeah.
to. And I can't even, begin to imagine, like, again, some of that internal language that you must have been kind of telling yourself, like even right at the beginning, calling yourself a crippled. And like, and I'm sure there was a lot of trial and error for you to try to begin, walking again, and maybe it wasn't working, wasn't working that day. So like, how were you able to keep yourself motivated to continue moving forward?
I love that you use the word motivated. I love it because a lot of people like, they're just like, you don't need motivation. And it's like, motivation literally means a reason to act. The bigger your reason, the more likely you are to act. Like, it'll bridge that gap from like, I know what to do and here's what I'm doing. Like, it'll bridge that gap. And like, I just sometimes adjusted my motivations, but really it was, what's the story I'm telling myself here? Because, and I remind people, they say like, man, I couldn't imagine being in a wheelchair for 23 years. I'm like, I didn't do it for 23 years. I did it for one day over and over. Like, I don't know if you noticed this, but we only get today. You don't live yesterday or tomorrow. Tomorrow never comes. Every day that you wake up is today. And I decided treating today like it mattered. Like okay, what can I do today? Oh, it didn't work yesterday. Okay, fine. I'm not in yesterday. I'm never in yesterday. And keeping myself as often as I could in today gave me the fuel that I needed because I only had to do it for today. And there's been times where I've gotten up and I'm sitting on the end of my bed, I'm looking at my chair and I'm just like, I don't want to freaking do this anymore. And then my story will kick in and say, well, what kind of person are you? Are you the person that gives up when it's not ideal? I'm like, no. It's like, well, then the chair doesn't matter. I'm just like, you're right. Let's do this. And it gives myself back that thing. And it's like, thank God I didn't give up on year 11 of that idea, even though it seemed unlikely, because it was year 18 that I started walking. After all that work and after thousands of hours in the gym and PT and, progress and setbacks and plateaus and the like, but just like, what's the story that sounds the best? The story that sounds the best is the story that dude didn't give up and like it worked. And I remind people that like, while we're so concerned with time, God's only concerned with timing. Not time, timing. So it's like there's a set time for like success and failure, success, failures, like it's already set times. So it's like, oh, if I believe and I convince myself and I see this thing, I don't know when, I'm going to get that ideal client. I don't know when I'm going to get married. I don't know when. I don't know the time. But the timing is set, and I can absolutely convince myself of that. And like all the miracles that Jesus ever did, he always said, your faith made this happen. Your belief made this happen. So it's like, it's on us anyway. Like as soon as you take that responsibility, even though that seems scary, accountability and responsibility are way more freeing than you think. And it gives you so much more power in your own story because like you said, you can't get away from yourself. You can't. So you might as well fall in love with your story and not give up on you. And as soon as I didn't give up on me, I was able to not only have my own amazing life, but so much more in the access to be able to coach other people to create their own worlds, which is pretty cool to do, honestly. To say I'm a superhero coach, like that's a cool thing to do.
Yeah, for sure. And like how rewarding to see people's life transform and like the beliefs in themselves and like that internal language. Like it just seems so fulfilling to be able to witness that and that transformation in other people. And I really love what you're saying about time and that all we have is now. And so, and you're right. And we hear that quite often of like, all we have is this present moment, but really like what happened in the past doesn't exist. It only exists in our mind. And we're only recreating it because we're bringing this back up into our mind, that we're reliving it into the present moment. And so again, like such a perspective shift. And I love how you're kind of like talking about movies and like, because we do see belief in like almost like so many movies, like so many cartoons, superhero movies, it's all belief. And it's just so interesting of like, just how much, like, almost like how much light is just kind of trying to remind us of our own power, right? Like it's like these little reminders everywhere of just kind of letting us know that like, hey, our belief is really that powerful in being able to create the life and the impact that we want to have.
Absolutely. And there's certain things that you absolutely can do And I tell people, like, even if you don't know exactly where you want to go, like, I don't know what I want with my life. I don't know what my purpose is. I don't know what I'm really good at. Okay, great. Start with what you absolutely don't want, because it's a lot easier. Like our brain is even geared to find problems, not solutions. Because if I can find problems, then maybe I can stay alive, you know? And like, oh, there's a mountain lion. Oh crap, run. You know, like being able to identify the obstacle is the thing that will probably keep you alive. But like most of our day to day is not life or death. So it's like, okay, well, what can I do with that skill? You can identify what you absolutely don't want. Okay, I don't want an abusive relationship. I don't want to be poor. I don't want to feel like I wasted my life. I don't want to be bored most of the time. You know, I don't want to feel like my time doesn't matter. I don't want to, you know, drink and be an alcoholic like my cousin. You know, great. Because as soon as you find all those things that you don't want, that's so much stuff that you can avoid. And then like the only thing that's left are the solutions, are the things that you do want. And a great exercise that I give my clients when we first start, and then I recommend to everybody, is divide a sheet of paper down the middle, and on the left side, write whatever it is that you don't want from your life. Like even negative ideas, like money doesn't grow on trees and it's really hard to be successful. You know, the other side, right? Money comes to me from so many sources. There's so much money everywhere and I'm good at stuff. And then once you write down all the negative on one side, you write down all the positive on the other, tear it in half and burn the left side. Burn all that negative stuff. Because visually, like you'll look at it as like, well, that's gone. All right, what's left? Whoa, all this great stuff. All right, now I know what to do. And it's like, you know, that once we see something burn, like if you saw your house burnt down, you wouldn't think, all right, let me go to bed now. No, you would think it's gone. And like visually, like you accept that those things are no longer a part of you. And like, I remind people that you don't have to open up the door all the way to success and amazingness. You just have to leave it open a little bit. Don't lock the door. Just don't lock the door to success and progress, you know?
Right.
Like leave it open just a sliver. Cause like you said, that light's trying to get through. Like how much more do you believe in love after you see a great rom-com? You know, how much more do you believe in laughter when you see a great comedy? How much more do you believe in your own power once you see like The Gladiator or The Avengers? You're like yeah, me and my friends will do that. I'm a winner, you know, because like that's all we really have. Like humanity is a story. And the most powerful stories are the ones that we remember. So why not be that person for yourself? You can absolutely be that. And once you stop waiting for the hero to come over the corner to save you, like even I was after my injury thinking somebody will figure it out. God was like, no, they won't. You figure it out, Milan. I made this time for you. You asked me for an epic life. This is the beginning of it. It's just the part of the story where it sucks. Like, so if you're in the part of the movie where it sucks, don't stop. Don't stop. And the great thing is you can never get behind when you're running your own race. That's something that it took a long time for me to learn. That I felt like I was behind because I was running somebody else's race. And it's like, no, dude, run your own race. Then you can never be behind. I'm like, oh, that makes so much sense. You know, and I started to have all those epiphany ideas and write those down into my book. And I didn't write it. I wrote it eventually for other people, but I wrote it for myself. You know, like even day one mindset, superhero training, I created those to solve my own problems. I was like, you know, my life is full of problems. I want more. And, you know, then it got to the point where it's like, I should give this to other people. And I can give this to other people and really make a big difference. And like you said, like it's so rewarding to see somebody like double their salary or to just, you know, be more confident or to act the way that they want to get more out of their own life. I'm just like, sweet, you know, now I got the epic story that I wanted because of the epic challenge and the story that I told myself about it.
Yeah, amazing. You're just full of so much wisdom, and I so appreciate everything that you're saying. And I love this concept because I feel like a lot of people could get stuck too of like, oh, I don't know enough yet, or oh, like my life is still a little bit in shambles, so I can't start sharing anything yet. And it's like, no, you still can, because what you have already went through, that could also still help others. And then it helps you when you share. Like, isn't it that they say if you really want to learn something, go teach it to someone else, because then you're really embodying what it is that you're learning, like you're retaining it that much more. And so I think we don't need to get like all of our ducks in a row before we actually start doing the thing. And
Yeah.
we're going to learn along the way. And so before we wrap up, Milan, I want to do a slight pivot here, because you have the successful coaching business, you have the book, and then you also have a podcast. So I want to know, what is it that enticed you to create a podcast, and how do you feel like your business is benefiting from having that podcast out there?
Really, I felt the call to tell my own story. That I was trying to figure it out. I named my podcast "My Life at a Weird Angle" because my life was at a weird angle. My life is still at a weird angle. I think everybody's life from time to time is at a weird angle of those moments where you're trying to figure it out. And I wanted to document that, of just like tell my side of things. And I heard it said that, what if we knew what Steve Jobs was thinking before he built Apple? How powerful would that be? And I was like, yeah, that's a good point. What if? And it's like, instead of waiting for somebody else to possibly interpret my story or write it for me, I was like, well, I can just record it. That's easy. That's doable with, my body. And once I did, I was like, whoa, I got a lot to say.
Mm-hmm.
And the guests that I had on too, like, they desired to tell their story as well, of like, here's how I figured it out. Here's what I was going through. Here are my breakthroughs. And like, it's so amazing because like, it's allowed me to share so much. But like I said, like, once those ideas are out, new ideas can come in, and then those ideas can go out, and then new ideas can come in. And like, some of those ideas have blossomed into my superhero training program that I literally wrote in a day when I was in Vegas. Like, I was speaking, I recorded a podcast, and then I wrote the entire journal that same day, because like, I was so inspired by what was coming out. And like, it's really served my business to have that extra bit of who I am and what I'm doing available all the time. Not everybody's ready for a $5,000 coaching program. Not everybody's ready to go through, all of that, what that entails. Anybody can listen to a podcast, and they can get insights that better them. And maybe they'll be my client one day. Maybe they never will be, but they'll carry those insights out. And part of my mission and my vision is to create 5 million superheroes. I don't have to work with all of them, but if there's 5 million superheroes around, that's exponential. That's generational change. And it's so amazing to be able to do that. And it's funny because I'll listen to my own podcast sometimes. I'm like, wow, Milan, you were freaking on a roll that day. Like, and I joke that like, hey, if you're not inspired by your own life, you're doing something wrong. And like, yeah, like I love my life. I love my story, and being able to hear it over and over, because I think the benefit of that too is like, I don't have to forget what I was thinking. I'm not like, man, what was that idea? Or like, oh yeah, it's episode 27, or now episode 156. And it's like amazing. Like, we talked about being attractive. I attract so many more powerful people to that story and to that platform. Like, I just had David Meltzer on my last episode, who's made, hundreds of millions of dollars in sports management and motivation and speaking. And, now he's a friend of mine and on my podcast, and like, it's cool. And like I said, like, I'm going for the coolest story here, the most authentic, cool story I can do. And this is just a part of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love all of that. Thank you. I feel like it perfectly summarizes just like the opportunity for like growth and connections that podcasting could provide you, like no matter where you're at. And I listen to my podcast episodes too. Often like reread some of my old journal entries, because you learn so much from yourself. Like, I think we need to believe that we have wisdom for ourselves. Like, we speak our own language, and so when we reread or re-listen to some of the things, we're like, oh, how, like, I really feel that. And so a lot of the things that we're saying, as much as it's for others, like, it's also for us. Again, that whole like, learn it, teach it to learn it, and things like that. It's amazing. Do you want to let everybody know where they can find you if they would like to connect and learn more?
Yeah, if you're the social media butterfly, like most people these days, Instagram is always a good place. It's simply I am Lord Milan. And the website is Day One Mindset, DAY, the number one mindset.com. And, you can see the podcast up there, some of my books, and hear from some of my clients even too about what they've experienced in the program and, go from there.
Okay. Amazing. All of those links will be below this video, so check it out. And if you're listening to this on the podcast, all of the links will be in the show notes. So thank you so much, Lord Milan, for being here today. It was really such an incredible conversation with you.
Awesome. Thanks, Jess.